Now there's no better place to start than at the beginning. And most woodworkers know that you won't get very far without properly milled lumber. A properly milled board will have each face milled flat and parallel to its opposing face. And each edge is going to be straight. It's also going to be 90 degrees to the adjacent face and parallel to the opposite edge. So why do we need square and flat lumber? Well, fine furniture starts with fine joinery, and you can't produce fine joinery without properly milled boards. You see, if we start with even slightly bowed, warped, or crooked boards, all of our reference points would be thrown off and all of our resulting joinery would suck more than my 5-horsepower Cyclone. With properly milled lumber, your cuts will be more accurate, your joints will be stronger, and your stress level will go way down, which all translates to better quality furniture and more fun in the shop. Now, every project I do starts right here at the jointer. It's the first step in a 4-part process that I use to mill up my boards. So before we get started, let's go over a few details.
Before jointing, I like to check to make sure that the fence is exactly 90 degrees to the bed. I usually check several locations along the infeed and outfeed tables. Next, I like to apply a coat of wax to the joiner's bed and fence. This will reduce friction and make the joining process much easier. Be sure to use a silicone-free wax though, because silicone has been known to cause finishing problems down the line. Next, I adjust the depth of cut to no more than 1/16 of an inch. And lastly, I check for loose-fitting clothes.
Now, I'd like to just take a few moments to talk about safety. I will always try to provide the best example possible when it comes to safe operating procedure. I'll even mention safety tips whenever I think of them. But nothing substitutes for common sense. No matter how safe I am, ultimately it's your decisions in your shop that will determine how safe you are. To sum it up, read all your manuals, don't do anything stupid, and above all, use your common sense. Respect these tools. Look at what they can do to wood. Imagine what they can do to flesh and bone. Now I'd like to start by jointing one of these faces first, and we can't just randomly select a side and go for it. We need to actually look at the properties of the board and determine what the smartest way to approach it is. Now as I sight down here, I'm looking for a cup. And I do see there's a slight rocking motion here. I've drawn on here with marker to show you the orientation of the cup. The safest way to cut this and actually joint this would be to joint the bottom, put it so that it looks like a frown, because we have 2 points for the wood to rest on as opposed to 1 point like this where it can rock and pivot, which isn't a good idea. The second thing I want to look for is if there's a bow in the board. This one's pretty straight. It's not really going to be a problem for us, but if there were a bow, you'll find 2 schools of thought. Some people swear by running it as a frown, and some people swear by running it as a smiley face. Do a little research, find out what works for you. Both of them will get you there. You just need to know, at different lengths how each one is going to behave and make the right decision for yourself. The third thing is grain direction. I've gone ahead and actually drawn the orientation of the grain to show you, sort of exaggerate what I can't show you with the camera that far away. Essentially, you have to know that the blades in the jointer are spinning clockwise. Okay, so as we run this across there, we want to make sure that the blades are going with the grain so that when it knocks these little pieces of wood out, we're not going to get chip out. If we run it through this way, you can see they'll actually break off and create a much rougher cut. So always want to cut with the grain. So now that we know how to select the right face and the right direction, let's get it on.
I start by making marks along the board's face using chalk or a pencil. These marks will let us know when the face is truly flat. Using push blocks, I apply a moderate amount of pressure as I push the piece over the blades. Be sure to focus your pressure on the outfeed side of the table for best results. Once the face is flat, I mark it with a squiggly line so I don't confuse it with the other face.
Now that we have one true face, we could put that face up against the joiner's fence and true one of our edges.
I start by marking the edge with chalk as I did on the face. With the previously jointed face against the fence, I begin jointing. I like to think of my right hand as the pusher and my left hand as the featherboard that applies pressure downward and against the fence. Be very, very aware of the location of your hands during this entire operation.
So at this point, you might ask yourself, why not just do the other 2 faces on the joiner? Now that will make those other two surfaces flat and straight, but what it won't do is make them parallel and coplanar with the first two surfaces. We could essentially end up with a wedge-shaped board. And by far the easiest way to achieve a coplanar surface on the other rough face is with the power planer.
With the previously jointed face down, I make my marks and send the board through the planer. For best results, I keep the cut depth down to about a 1/16 of an inch. Be sure to keep your fingers above the board at all times to avoid pinching.
Now the final step in the process is to true up our second edge, and the easiest way to do that is to go to our shop workhorse, our table saw.
At this point, I take off just enough material to clean up the edge. It's a good idea to use a push stick for added safety.